Hey everybody, it's Nelson Everhart. It's been a while since I made a video, so let's splash back in with a Pirate101 track. This is the Zig Zag combat track from the release from a few months ago at the time of this recording, Pirate101 expansion. Now the challenge of this track was to take a pre-existing world, Krakatopia, that exists in Wizard 101 and move it into the Pirate 101 world. And specifically, you're trying to call back to, pre-existing themes and orchestrations and arrangements that, being as they were from Arc 1, are pretty solid in the player's mind. So I had to reference it, but I never like completely retreading an idea. I'm always trying to add some new material to it. To me, it's a really neat challenge. It's kind of like getting to remix yourself. You had these ideas have kind of taken on a life of their own outside of their genesis. And now you have a chance to kind of revisit it with that reflective lens, So there wasn't much specific feedback to go on other than, pirate versions of Krakatopia themes. I did get the general storyline of the Armada Legion that didn't get the memo that the war was over. Sorry, spoiler alert. So I came into this having some, ideas of some themes and some vibes that I wanted to use, but with the benefit of a lot of new sound libraries and a lot of new techniques that have, developed in the intervening years. So let's take a listen through and then we'll come back and talk about it. It's been so long I forgot that I have to follow along with the track. And there's that loop. As an aside, I want to do a video on how I loop these tracks to hopefully play back seamlessly. Leave a comment down below if that's something that you'd be interested in. So tons of tracks. I think that's because I have the normal kind of Wizard 101 orchestral setup. I have the added layer of the sort of Middle Eastern world instruments. And then I also have a bunch of sort of more piratey sounds that I was trying to weave into the track to make it specific to Pirate 101. Most often leave a little room at the beginning of the session. Sometimes I have an idea that I start with that I wind up deleting, but mostly this is to have a little bit of flexibility about the loop point. So the Darabuka is a mostly Egyptian instrument. It's a drum shaped like a goblet, and it's got a skin head on the top. When I'm doing world music, I'm not Egyptian. I'm not trying to do an actual direct version of Egyptian music or any particular culture or ethnicity. I'm trying to create something new. And something that's always fun is coming back to libraries that you used almost 2 decades Previous 2007. Oh man, 2027 is coming up. It's going to almost be 20 years. Hey, what should we do for the 20th anniversary? Leave a comment down below. Coming back to these tunes and coming back to some of the instruments that I used back then, this is from the original Contact library. So our original factory library, percussion, there's our African shakers. This is one of the first libraries I had access to. Coming back to it was kind of like, oh yeah, I have these sounds, and some of the old ones are actually pretty good. Kind of more of a battle drum feel. All right, so if you're a number conspiracy theorist, watch when this theme enters in the Krakatoa 1 remix. So I had that rattling around my brain in the intervening almost 2 decades. So this theme comes in and we pass it around from a few different instruments. So that's pretty fun. Here's some context for it. Let's get the spiccato strings in there. So this pattern sort of suggested itself after coming out of these themes. I didn't want to just keep quoting. Usually if I'm sort of quoting myself, I kind of want to drop that and then move on to something else. It's pretty teasy for sure, but it usually works best that way. Like you don't want to gild that particularly. And then I wanted to move on to another idea, and I wanted to get into the pirate idea. So this is more of a kind of yo-ho pirate. So Cinesamples has this library called Accent Pianos. I've mentioned Cinesamples a million times before. I use a lot of the brass and woodwind stuff. And this library came out, interesting idea. Well, here's what it is. And it only goes up to middle C, right? It's really a low accent. And I started playing it on the 1 and 3 of these bars. And it's got that kind of piratey yo-ho, don't, kind of a bass line, just to accent some of those lower lines. And it worked really well. And again, with the pirate thing, the shortcut into that music is the accordion. And this screams pirate. That kind of bouncy pirate beat. I don't know if I've talked about this library. I downloaded this when I was doing the Wizard 101 Nightmare Bawu swampy music. I needed a accordion, couldn't find one in the... I don't have a ton of accordions around in my library because I don't have a ton of color to write for them, but I found this beautiful polka box. Look at that thing. I love the sound of this guy. It's pretty... And you've got the mod wheel mapped running out of air, and you're pushing the squeeze box in and out, and it can really, I don't know, it really livens up a track. There's some accordions in some of my Contact libraries, but it doesn't speak like that. Anytime I needed like a little bit more accent, a little bit more kind of support and padding, I'd bring that in. A lot of fun. And sprinkled liberally throughout here is the harp. I used a lot of the harp in the original Arc, and it's one of the instruments that gives the spiral its sound, I think. Sprinkled all throughout here, but there's a lot of things going on, so sometimes it's harder to hear. Ooh, nice slap. There's our accents piano back in. So this is a kind of an odd line for a harp to play, but we've got a couple stringed world instruments, the oud and the canoon. And let's see, the oud is an instrument I used everywhere in the original Croctopia. And the canoon has a more kind of a ringier sound. It's more of a zither. A little more nasal. And that's an instrument I brought in to develop that Croctopia sound, make it sound a little bit like it's from maybe a different region, Croctopia, maybe a more, northern Arabic area of, Wizard 101. Piratey kind of comedic moments. I wanted to bring it back to like, all right, action. And obviously percussion is a big deal here. We've got some tablas from India, another common instrument in the original Croctopia tunes. Clearly building up the tension with these different intervals here. So if we look, this is in G minor, and it starts off just playing octave Gs. And then we introduce a lot of that tension by playing a minor second interval, which is just whatever the note on the keyboard is, and then the note immediately to the right of it. And then we come up to a minor third interval. And then the next interval is between G and C sharp, and that's as far away as you can get from a note, and it's very, very dissonant. And I have that little da-da-da-da-da-da, which ties it all up in a more sonorous way. Then we move to the next section, which is time for that canoon. Is that what we decided? How we decided it was pronounced? So the Shan Bawu, this is actually a Chinese instrument. It's probably not pronounced like that, and it's a flute, but it actually has a metal reed in it. This kind of got the closest of my contact instruments to actually sound like what I needed it to sound like. Very pure clarinet-like sound, isn't it? But there is a little bit of a reed in there, and I also added a accordion-like instrument, the harmonetum. Wanted something a little more reedy in there. Then we get to the Duduk, which I think is an Armenian instrument. I love all the character in a Duduk. There's a lot of interesting little harmonic flips that it does in between notes, but it's not consistent enough on its own to cut through all that background of an action track, so I doubled it at the canoon just for the definition. And this patch here is called Symphonic Destruction. So this is a Heaviosity library that I bought, and it's got a lot of heavier kind of cinematic grooves. And I really liked this to break everything down because we've been moving along at this quick clip, and we slow it down to a halftime. And that lets you start to build everything back up again. Mouse batteries are dying, and I can't even click the pause record right now. I'll be right back. So this next melody there, is that same minor second. This traditionally would be kind of an improvised line in here. Some of my favorites to come up with because they kind of have to sound off the cuff. You want them to sound improvised and like it's off the top of their head, but obviously this is something that's a little more considered than that. However, the way I come up with it is usually by improvising it. So I'll just have that groove playing and I'll be goofing around with the instruments that I have in the back to the beginning again. We also have that symphonic destruction patch right there at the beginning, setting the stage. And obviously you get inspiration from that, and to write parts along with that, you have to use that same melody. So a lot of the patterns of accents down here in the low strings. It's taken right out of the loop. Unisons, man, unisons. So I think when I was a kid thinking about orchestral writing, I never would have thought that just unisons, meaning these are all the same pitches. It's an E, it's an E, it's an E, and it's just spread across 3 octaves. The strings sound extremely dramatic when they're all playing they're playing the same notes just in different octaves. And this is again my how you know I don't write for real orchestras a lot. I have those low strings kind of cranking away down here, and there's obviously a lot of them. They're playing chords, and then I also have the long strings playing in 3 octaves. So normally in an orchestra there wouldn't be enough strings to do all of these parts, or to do them as big as, I might want them. So there you go. Some new content for Pirate 101 finally. And right after this Krokotopia for Pirate 101, we then did Selenopolis for Wizard 101. So more content from the same area to look at. Hope you're having a good 2025 so far, and just, ignoring the state of the world, having fun playing your RPG. Thanks for hanging out again. And my name's Nelson Everhart. See you soon.